Hi everyone, my name is Rochelle and I would like to talk about mental illness and the effects that it has on individuals. Mental health, as defined by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, is an important part of overall health and well-being. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy decisions. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. The CDC further states that problems with mental health are very common in the United States, with an estimated 50% of all Americans diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder at some point in their lifetime. Mental illnesses such as depression are the third most common cause of hospitalization in the United States for those aged 18 to 44 years old. And adults living with serious mental illness die on average 25 years earlier than others. Public opinion surveys suggest that many people think mental illness and violence go hand in hand. A 2006 national survey found that 60% of Americans thought that people with schizophrenia were likely to act violently towards someone else, while 32% thought that people with major depression were likely to do so. Contrarily, research has shown that most individuals with psychiatric disorders are not violent. Although a subset of people with psychiatric disorders commit assaults and violent crimes, findings have been inconsistent about how much mental illness contributes to this behavior and how much substance abuse and other factors do. I would like to discuss two separate incidents that recently occurred where two males with no affiliation caused serious or fatal harm to others. On April 12th, while outside of the Rainforest Cafe located in the Mall of America in Minnesota, a 5-year-old boy accompanied by his mother was thrown over a third-floor balcony by a 24-year-old man named Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda. According to the boy's mother, the man approached him and proceeded to pick the child up and toss him over the balcony. In May of this year, Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda pled guilty to attempted premeditated first-degree murder, and in June he was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda did not know this family or had any prior dealings with this mother and her 5-year-old son. This man admitted to seeking out any adult to cause harm, but chose the boy out of convenience. Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda stated that he was rejected by several women at the Mall of America over the years and decided to release his anger and frustration by causing harm to another. By the grace of God, the 5-year-old boy survived, but not without severe bleeding, head trauma, and several broken bones. It is now August, and we have learned that the boy has been transferred from the intensive care unit and into a rehabilitation facility, according to CNN. My question is Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda sane, or does he suffer with mental health disorders or illness? And if so, what type of mental disorder? There are many types of mental disorders. The most common ones are anxiety disorder, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, personality disorders, psychotic disorders, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, mood disorders, depression, and phobias. How did Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda make it to 24 years of age without diagnosis or treatment? He must have shown early signs and symptoms that could be observed by family, friends, teachers, co-workers, and other associates. Was he on some sort of drug that causes erratic behaviors? I am in no way justifying what Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda has done. He was wrong and deserved to pay for his crime. However, just because he was able to give a reason as to why he did such a heinous act, does it make him sane enough to stand trial? Did the judicial system have Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda psychologically evaluated before he was sentenced to 19 years in prison? Should he have been placed in a mental institution where he would be receiving ongoing treatment instead? It isn't hard to notice that Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda is a black male, and according to the National Alliance on Mental Health, only about 1/4 of African Americans seek mental health care compared to 40% of whites. Crime, incarceration, and detention is directly associated with race and racism. Although 52% of blacks are held in mental institutions involuntarily, the insanity defense, whether appropriate or not, is often reserved for the white population. Now let's discuss extreme racism. And is it a mental health disorder or should it be? Just recently, a 21-year-old white male by the name of Patrick Crusius traveled to a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, which is 10 hours away from his hometown of Allen, Texas, shot and killed at least 22 people and injured 26 others this past Saturday, August the 3rd. This man was filled with so much rage, hatred, and disdain for Mexicans that he had decided to take out an entire race because they are not white. Patrick Crusius is said to have written a racist anti-immigrant letter, a manifesto as it is called by the authorities, explaining how he believed America is being overran by Hispanic immigrants, doesn't believe in race mixing, and want Mexicans to go back to their country. The manifesto, titled The Inconvenient Truth, was published on an online message board approximately 20 minutes before the shooting occurred. The manifesto reflects many ideas influenced by President Trump, Fox News, and the modern Republican Party. For example, Patrick Crusius allegedly warns of a Hispanic invasion and says Democrats are using open borders and free health care for illegals to encourage new voters. It is also alleged that Patrick Crusius' manifesto invokes a fear that an influential Hispanic population in Texas would make a state Democratic stronghold. But he says the Republican Party is also terrible because the GOP is, in his mind, pro-corporation, which could lead to more immigration. Patrick Crusius stated that he has held to these beliefs for years. He is currently being held without bond and has been charged with capital murder. But if he is the author of the manifesto, in his mind, he deserved to die. The manifesto ended with these words: "I'm probably going to die today." However, he is not a black man, therefore he lived. I read one article where someone stated that Patrick Crusius seemed to be a lost young man due to what he had written on LinkedIn while in high school. Patrick Crusius stated, "I'm not really motivated to do anything anymore than what's necessary, really, to get by. Working in general sucks, but I guess a career in software development suits me well. I spend about 8 hours every day on the computer, so that counts toward technology experience, I guess. Pretty much just gonna see what technology careers presents themselves to me. Go with the wind." That is very interesting. The same wasn't said or assumed of Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda, the black male who tossed the 5-year-old boy over the balcony of the Mall of America in Minnesota in April. Again, I'm not saying that Patrick Crusius should not be prosecuted for his crime, but I am almost certain that he had to have shown signs and symptoms of severe mental health disorders prior to this cold-blooded massacre. Was he on drugs? Was his way of thinking patterned by what he lived? Meaning, was it influenced by family members or friends? If Patrick Crusius is in fact the one who penned the manifesto, then he admitted to having these beliefs for years, even before Donald Trump was even president. We can only assume that if Patrick Crusius received mental health rehabilitation, the El Paso shooting, killing and injuring so many, could have been avoided. Emmanuel Deshawn Aranda received 19 years behind bars for his crime. Let us see how many years or what other punishment Patrick Crusius received for his crime. According to a 2018 report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, BJS, nearly 2.2 million adults were held in the America's prison and jails at the end of 2016. That means for every 100,000 people residing in the United States, approximately 655 of them were behind bars. Another research study states that approximately 20% of inmates in jails and 15% of inmates in state prisons have a serious mental illness. Based on the total number of inmates, this means that there are approximately 356,000 inmates with serious mental illness in jails and state prisons. What is the government doing to help individuals with mental illness or disorders, and is it enough? According to the Medical Health America, the federal government and state governments have complementary roles in funding and regulating mental health and substance use treatment. The mental health and substance abuse treatment systems have undergone some change with an evolving federal-state partnership that has promoted the development of community-based care, but they remain as a whole siloed, fragmented, and inadequate. Access to effective community-based services and support is extremely limited for many people, and despite some progress, people who experience mental health and substance abuse conditions still face discrimination in education, employment, health care, and many other areas of community life. Let's face the facts. We all probably know someone who has experienced mental health issues or mental illnesses at some point or another. However, there are many dangerous convictions, misconceptions, and stigmas surrounding mental health that cause society to overlook mental health issues. These things are discouraging to those who need it most. These individuals don't get help but commit suicide, hurt, or kill others, and go to prison. Sleep in peace, Geraldine. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, about 1 in 5 American adults and 1 in 5 children will experience a mental disorder at some point in their lives. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 15 to 34 in the United States. Poor mental health increases the risk for long-lasting, chronic physical conditions like heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Mental illness can be treated. Research shows that people with mental illness can get better and many recover completely. Mental health is an important part of overall health and well-being. The vast majority of people with mental illness are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. In fact, people with mental illnesses are more likely to be victims of violent crimes than the general public. Half of all mental illness occurs before a person turns 14 years old, and 3/4 of mental illness begin before age 24. Mental illness is caused by a number of factors, including biological factors, stressful or traumatic life events, and long-lasting health conditions such as heart disease or cancer. If you know someone with poor mental health, you can help by reaching out and letting them know help is available, helping them access mental health services, and learning and sharing the facts about mental health, especially if you hear something that isn't true. How can racism be eliminated? Well, let's define racism. Racism is the belief that one race is superior and better than another. Institutional racism or systematic racism is a form of racism apparent in the practice of social and political institutions. This way of thinking weighs heavily relating to inequalities of wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, education, the right to love, and the right to life. In social inequality and social stratification in U.S. society, Christopher Dube writes that colorblind racism represents whites' assertion that they are living in a world where racial privilege no longer exists. However, the minimization of racism suggests discrimination is no longer the primary factor affecting minorities' life choices. We all know that this ideology is false. So, how can racism be eliminated? Learn to recognize and understand your own privilege. Being aware of those privileges and acknowledging their existence and implications is the first step. When we think of privileges in society, we typically think of white privilege. White privilege is a right, advantage, or immunity granted and enjoyed by white people, surpassing the common advantage of all other races. Examine your own biases and how you may have acquired them. Did you learn these biases from your parents, grandparents, political figures that you admire, an area in which you lived growing up? Examining your own biases can help you work to make certain equality is established for all. Acknowledge and consider the feelings, experiences, and conditions that people of color had and currently endure. Listen, research, and learn of the oppressions people of color suffered. Don't engage in racist jokes, statements, and behaviors, but call them out when you see or hear such vulgarities. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Challenge the colorblind ideology. Being colorblind ignores the real injustices that affects people because of the color of their skin and race. Racism will not go away just because you do not want to see that it exists. Get involved. Support people of color in the fight against racism. Systemic racism means that there are barriers, including wealth disparities, criminal justice biases, and education and housing discrimination, stacked up against people of color in the workforce, educational system, and others. Don't be afraid to stand up. Encourage your place of employment to get involved. Patronize businesses owned by people of color. Finally, let's support a culture of equality for all and not assume that it is had by all. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak my mind and sharing with you all. Remember that recent acts of violence are such horrific occurrences spewed because of hatred and ignorance. I truly pray for every victim and their family and friends. I also pray that God have mercy on us and that He changes the hearts of us all. Racism equals ignorance. Discrimination equals stupidity. I am Rochelle. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you get alerts for my future videos. Give me time. They will get better. Peace, love, and light.